Elena Ward was 29 years old when her world collapsed under a betrayal she never saw coming. For most of her life, her grandfather, Henry Ward, had been the only person who truly loved her without condition. Henry, a hard-working man who built his logistics company, Ward Freight Lines, from nothing, spent years training Elena as his successor. He promised her everything: the $12 million estate, the family company, and the legacy he had protected for decades. But after his death, Elena discovered the truth in the most brutal way. Her parents, Robert and Carla, and her younger sister, Lila, had rewritten the will and stolen every part of Henry's legacy. When she questioned them, Robert dragged her out of the family home by her hair and threw her into the street. As Elena sat on the cold ground, shaking, she whispered to herself, "They will regret this." And deep down, she meant every word. For anyone watching from a place where family has cut deep wounds, Elena's story was about to show what strength looks like when everything is taken away. Henry Ward had always been more than a grandfather to Elena. Growing up, while her parents chased social status and spoiled her fashionable sister Lila, Henry took Elena everywhere. She rode with him to warehouses, walked the shipping docks, and sat beside him in meetings long before she understood what was happening. "Courage makes a leader," he often told her, his warm smile softening the edges of his stern business voice. Not perfection. On Sundays, he took Elena fishing at Miller Lake, their private sanctuary, where he shared the stories of his youth. He told her how he started Ward Freight from one rusty truck and a borrowed loan. By 16, Elena could read balance sheets better than college graduates, and employees whispered proudly, "She's the future of this company." Even at home, when her mother mocked her for coming home dusty from working with Henry, or when Lila boasted about parties and new clothes, Elena stayed focused. She wanted nothing more than to make Henry proud. And by her late 20s, she had done exactly that, rising from the mailroom to chief operations officer entirely on her own merit. But her success only deepened her father Robert's bitterness. Robert Ward had worked as Ward Freight's chief financial officer for nearly 3 decades, and the admiration Henry gave Elena cut him deeply. "Do you really think expanding into coastal routes is smart?" he would ask sarcastically during family dinners. Elena stayed calm every time. "The revenue projections support expansion. Grandpa already approved it," she would answer. Robert hated the quiet confidence in her voice. Carla, Elena's mother, never hid her favoritism either. "Why can't you behave more like Lila?" she scolded. "Always refined. Always presentable." Elena forced herself not to respond. She kept her focus on the company, working longer hours, learning from Henry, and ignoring the whispers of jealousy. Her bond with Henry was everything she needed. But all of that changed the day she found Henry collapsed on his office floor. She called 911 with trembling hands, and after hours of waiting, the doctors told her the truth she wasn't ready to accept. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months at most. As the news sank in, Elena noticed something odd in her parents' eyes. Behind the sadness, there was something cold, something calculating. Henry asked to see Elena alone that first night in the hospital. His hands, once strong and steady, trembled as he held hers. "Be strong, Elena," he whispered. "Trust only what I told you directly." Elena tried to smile, but her throat tightened. "You'll recover, Grandpa. I'll make sure of it." Henry's eyes glimmered sadly. "I've made arrangements for the company. You're ready. The board knows my wishes." Over the next few weeks, Elena barely left his side. She brought contracts, reports, and notebooks, managing Ward Freight from a small chair pressed against his hospital bed. They talked business, but they also talked about life. Henry spoke of purpose, integrity, and what it meant to protect a legacy. "Leadership isn't about power," he told her. "It's about responsibility." But Elena's calm shattered when she noticed something strange. Her parents, who barely visited Henry twice a year, suddenly stayed at the hospital all day. Nurses blocked Elena from entering at times, claiming Henry needed rest. Yet she caught glimpses of him awake, talking to Robert with worry etched into his face. One afternoon, Elena saw Graham Eller, Henry's longtime attorney, leaving Henry's room with a stiff expression. "Why the legal visit?" Elena asked. "Just updating some paperwork," Graham said quickly. But his eyes didn't match his words. When Elena entered the room moments later, Henry smiled, but his gaze held something unspoken. "Don't worry about legal matters," he said softly. "I'm just protecting what matters most." She squeezed his hand, feeling fear twist in her stomach. "Is Dad pressuring you?" At that,
Henry's eyes dimmed. Families are complicated, he said. But I stand by everything I've told you.
Whatever happens, know I tried my best. As Henry's health declined, Elena often overheard arguments behind his closed door, Robert's voice sharp, Henry's faint but firm. Carla dabbed fake tears in the waiting room, while Lila posed in muted dresses as if preparing for a photo shoot. Something was happening behind Elena's back. Something dangerous. In Henry's final lucid moment, he whispered to her, "Remember our fishing spot?
And your favorite book in my library?
The answers you need are there." 2 days later, Henry slipped into a coma. 3 days after that, he passed away with the family gathered around him.
Elena's heart broke in silence.
While her parents walked out together, Robert with his arm around Lila, Elena walked alone. A week later, the family gathered in Attorney Ella's office for the formal reading of the will. The air was thick with tension as they sat around the polished table.
Graham cleared his throat.
"I offer my condolences. Henry was a valued client and dear friend." Robert responded curtly, "Thank you. Let's proceed." When Graham read the first line, Elena's breath stopped. "I, Henry Ward, being of sound mind, hereby revoke all previous wills." Elena stared at him in shock. Revoked?
That was impossible. Henry had promised her everything for years.
But Graham continued reading, and each sentence cut deeper. According to the new will, Henry left the entire estate, $12 million, the company shares, the home, to Lila.
Robert would serve as interim CEO. Elena felt the room tilt.
Her heartbeat roared in her ears.
This wasn't real. It couldn't be.
"This has to be a mistake," Elena whispered.
"He trained me my whole life.
He wouldn't do this." Graham looked uncomfortable. This document was signed 3 weeks before Henry passed, with witnesses present. Elena looked at her parents. "What did you do?" Robert's expression was stone.
Henry made the choice.
Perhaps he finally realized who was truly dedicated.
Lila smirked.
"Guess you weren't as special as you thought." Graham then handed Elena a sealed letter. "Henry left this for you." Elena reached for it, but Robert cut in.
"You can read that later. We have work to do."
Back at the family home, things spiraled quickly.
"The board meets tomorrow," Robert said.
"You won't be there." "I'm the COO," Elena said. "Not anymore." Robert's voice was cold. "My first act as interim CEO is to terminate you. We're moving in a new direction." Elena could barely breathe.
"You can't fire me. I earned my place."
"Clients care about results, not your feelings," Carla said. Lila stretched lazily on the sofa. "I think I'll take your office. The one with the big windows."
Elena laughed bitterly.
"You know nothing about global logistics, Lila."
Lila shrugged.
"I'll learn, now that it's all mine."
"Grandpa would never want this," Elena said.
"You manipulated him while he was sick."
Robert's face darkened.
"Enough." He made his decision. Elena pressed. "What documents did you push in front of him? What threats?"
Carla gasped dramatically. "How dare you?"
Henry was of sound mind. Elena stood firm.
"I'm contesting this." Robert laughed. "With what money? Your salary is gone."
"Your apartment and car belong to the company." Every word tightened around her like a rope. They weren't just punishing her, they were stripping her ability to fight. The next morning, her mother entered her room coldly. "Pack your things. You have until sundown." Elena packed slowly, choosing only what she truly needed.
A knock came. Carla and Lila entered, eyes sharp.
"Not those clothes," Lila snapped, grabbing Elena's bag. "Family money bought them."
Elena pulled back.
"These are mine."
Carla sneered.
"Everything in this house is family property, and you're no longer family." The words stabbed deeper than any knife. When Lila snatched Henry's birthday pendant from her hands, Elena cried out, "That was a gift from Grandpa."
"It's mine now," Lila replied.
Elena reached for the framed graduation photo.
"Not this," she whispered. Carla called for Robert.
He stormed in, grabbed Elena by the hair, and dragged her across the floor.
"You brought this on yourself," he growled.
Elena screamed, but he didn't stop.
He pulled her through the foyer and threw her onto the driveway. Gravel tore her palms.
"If you return, I'll have you arrested," Robert said. With tears blurring her vision, Elena picked up the small purse Carla threw at her. Phone, wallet, nothing else. Standing on the driveway, she whispered. You will regret this day. Robert scoffed. Empty threats.
The door slammed.
Elena walked the long driveway one last time, the house behind her now a symbol of betrayal instead of home. With nowhere to go, she boarded a bus and checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. In the dim room, she broke down completely, sobbing for Henry, for the life stolen from her, for the cruelty she couldn't understand. But beneath the grief, something sharp and alive began to rise. A spark of determination. They think they've won, she whispered in the dark. They have no idea who I am. Henry's final message echoed in her mind. Remember our fishing spot.
And your favorite book.
Elena wiped her tears.
Tomorrow, she would begin her fight.
Morning came with a pounding headache and sore scalp, but Elena woke with a clearer mind. She pulled the sealed letter from her bag, the one Graham had given her. Inside, Henry's handwriting trembled across the page.
Remember our special place. Check your favorite book. Trust only Nora.
Elena read the lines again and again. Our special place could only mean Miller Lake. Her favorite book in Henry's library was The Art of War, the copy he'd given her at 16. Nora had to be Nora Hale, Henry's loyal executive assistant of 20 years. Elena checked her phone. Dozens of messages from colleagues blinked in confusion and concern, but nothing from her family. She dialed Nora's number with shaking hands. Elena? Nora answered, voice tight with worry. Are you safe? Not really, Elena said honestly. My father fired me, took the company, and threw me out of the house.
There was a pause.
He told staff not to contact you, Nora whispered. But Henry trusted you. That's enough for me. Meet me at Riverbend Cafe in an hour. Come alone. Riverbend Cafe was quiet when Elena arrived, wearing the only clothes she had left. Nora sat at a corner table, eyes widening at the faint bruises on Elena's arms and the tenderness on her scalp. My God, what did he do to you? Nora breathed. He dragged me by my hair and threw me out, Elena said, her voice steady but low. Then acted like I was the problem. Nora's face hardened. Henry would never have allowed this. Elena leaned in. Did you know about his will? Nora nodded slowly. The original one, yes. He showed me last year. Everything went to you, the estate, the company, the house. 3 weeks before he died, your father brought in a different lawyer. Not Graham. They stayed with Henry for hours. He left that room, defeated. So they forced him, Elena whispered. Or trapped him. Nora dropped her voice. I heard your father threaten him once. He said he had evidence that would destroy the company if Henry didn't change the will. Elena's eyes sharpened. Evidence of what? I don't know, Nora replied. But Henry had me order a recording device disguised as a pen. Elena showed Nora the letter. He wrote, check your favorite book. Trust only Nora. Does that mean anything to you? Nora studied it. Your favorite book. The Art of War, right? Elena nodded. Henry kept a hidden safe behind that book at the house, Nora said quietly. But before he got sick, he grew nervous. He asked me to store some personal things at my home, photos, journals, a few books. That same copy of The Art of War is in a box in my guest room. Hope flickered in Elena's chest for the first time since Henry died. And the special place? Nora asked. Miller Lake, Elena said. There's an old oak tree where we used to tuck notes into the bark. Nora leaned forward. Henry also told me, a month before he went to the hospital, to open a safe deposit box under his name at Crescent National Bank. He said it was protection from your father. Elena swallowed. Did he tell you where the key is? Nora shook her head. Just that you would know how to find it. Elena exhaled. Then I need to go to the lake. The park around Miller Lake was almost empty when Elena arrived that afternoon. The wind rustled the trees as she walked the familiar path, past the worn bench where she and Henry had once eaten sandwiches, past the small dock where he had first showed her how to cast a line. The old oak tree still stood near the water's edge, gnarled and solid. Her fingers trembled as she reached into the hollow where they used to hide notes when she was little. Something cold brushed her skin. She closed her hand around a tiny metal key attached to a faded fishing lure. Tears stung her eyes. You really planned everything, didn't you? She whispered. That evening, Elena went to Nora's house, a modest 2-story home filled with warm lamps and framed photos. Nora set a cardboard box on the kitchen table. These are Henry's things, she said.
On top sat the leather-bound copy of The Art of War. Elena picked it up carefully. The spine felt thicker than she remembered. She ran her hand along it until she felt a small ridge. With a soft click, a hidden compartment slid open. Inside the hollow spine lay a folded note and a small USB drive. Elena opened the note first. For Elena. The truth about Robert's betrayal is here. Use it wisely, my brave girl. Love, Henry. Her throat tightened.
Nora plugged the USB drive into her laptop while Elena watched, gripping the edge of the table. Dozens of audio files appeared, each dated from Henry's final months.
Start with the latest, Elena whispered. Henry's weakened voice filled the room. I won't do it, Robert.
I won't betray Elena.
Robert's reply was low and cold. You don't have a choice. Sign the new will, or I go public with the documents. The board will think you've been stealing for years.
Your precious company will crumble, and your golden granddaughter will watch it burn.
Those records are false and you know it, Henry protested. They won't care what's true, Robert said.
Only what they can prove. File after file revealed more threats, arguments about forged financial documents, shouted warnings, and Henry's fear for Elena's reputation. When the last recording ended, Nora wiped her eyes. He changed the will to protect you, she whispered. To stop your father from destroying everything. The next morning, Elena walked into Crescent National Bank with the fishing lure key clutched in her palm. The clerk led her to the safe deposit room, where a long metal drawer slid open with a firm tug. Inside sat a sealed envelope, a flash drive, and several neatly stacked documents. Elena unfolded the papers with careful hands. The first was Henry's original will, naming her as sole heir and successor to Ward Freight. The second detailed, in Henry's own words, how Robert had coerced him into signing a fraudulent replacement while he was weak and medicated. Attached to the file was a notarized statement from Henry's doctor confirming his fragile state. The flash drive contained spreadsheets and bank records tracing money Robert had secretly siphoned from the company into offshore accounts using fake invoices. You projected your crimes onto him, Elena whispered, feeling equal parts fury and relief. She knew she couldn't fight this alone. That afternoon, on Nora's recommendation, she met attorney Evan Grant, a calm, sharp-eyed litigator known for taking on powerful people who thought they were untouchable. In Evan's office, sunlight streamed across polished wood as Elena spread out the evidence: Henry's original will, his statement about coercion, the audio recordings, and the financial records. Evan listened without interrupting, then leaned back, exhaling slowly. This is serious, he said. Your father has committed multiple crimes: fraud, coercion, embezzlement. And the new will? Completely compromised. Elena's voice was steady. Can we overturn it? Evan nodded. Yes. The original will is valid. We'll also move to suspend your father as CEO and freeze any transfers he's made. But be prepared. He will fight back. Elena's eyes hardened. He already dragged me by the hair and left me with nothing. I'm not afraid of a court battle. Evan gave a small approving smile. Then here's our plan. We'll gather sworn statements from Henry's doctors. Nora will testify to the threats she overheard and the device she ordered. I'll bring in forensic accountants to trace every stolen dollar. When we're ready, we'll call an emergency board meeting. And we won't walk in empty-handed. For the first time since being thrown out, Elena felt like she wasn't fighting alone. 2 weeks later, Elena stood in front of Ward Freight's glass tower, dressed in a simple dark suit Evan had helped her buy with a small loan. Her heart pounded, but her steps were sure. Nora met her at the entrance and squeezed her hand. The board is upstairs. They agreed to the emergency meeting after Evan sent them the brief summary. At the reception desk, the guard frowned uncertainly. Ms. Ward, your access was revoked. Nora flashed a visitor badge. She's expected. In the boardroom on the top floor, 10 directors sat around the table. Robert occupied Henry's old seat at the head, with Lila beside him scrolling on her phone. This better be important, Robert snapped at the board chair, an older man named Howard Cole. I have a company to run. The door opened. I believe I can explain, Elena said, stepping in with Evan and Nora behind her. Robert shot to his feet. You have no right to be here. Security. Howard raised a hand. Sit down, Robert. We invited her. Murmurs rippled through the room as Elena took a seat at the opposite end of the table. Evan began passing out folders. My name is Evan Grant. I represent Elena Ward. Inside your folders are documents you must read carefully. Robert slammed his hand on the table. This is a stunt. She's a disgruntled ex-employee trying to stir trouble.
Elena met his eyes calmly.
You terminated me under false pretenses, just like you stole the company under a false will. Robert scoffed, but some of the directors were already frowning at the pages. Henry's original will, the notarized statement about coercion, the timeline of Robert's threats.
Howard's jaw tightened.
Robert, these are serious allegations. They are lies, Robert snapped. Nora connected her laptop to the room speakers with a steady hand.
Then you'll want to hear this, she said quietly. Henry's recorded voice filled the boardroom.
I won't betray Elena. Those records are falsified. You're blackmailing me, Robert.
The room fell silent.
Lila's face drained of color.
Dad, is that real? She whispered.
When the final recording ended, Evan spoke again. We also traced $3.2 million moved from Ward Freight into offshore accounts, all under Robert's approval. Details are in Section 3. Robert's face shifted from red to pale.
This is a setup, he muttered. She's trying to steal the company.
I built this with your father.
Elena shook her head. Henry built this.
You tried to burn it down when you didn't get the power you wanted. Two men in dark suits entered the room just then, badges visible. Robert Ward. One of them said evenly, "We're with financial enforcement. We'd like you to come answer some questions about these accounts." Robert looked wildly from face to face. Howard, you're not going to let this happen, are you?
I'm the CEO. Howard stood slowly.
Not anymore. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending investigation. Security stepped closer. As the officers guided Robert toward the door, he stopped beside Elena. You'll regret this, he hissed. I'm still your father.
Elena looked at him steadily.
A father doesn't drag his daughter by the hair and throw her into the street.
Robert had no answer.
The door closed behind him. The boardroom exhaled as if one heavy weight had been lifted. Howard turned to Elena. We have much to discuss, he said. Starting with your rightful place in this company. With Robert gone, the room felt strangely still. Howard cleared his throat and looked at Lila, who sat frozen in her chair, her hands trembling around her phone. Miss Lila, he said carefully, in light of these discoveries, your provisional leadership role is revoked. Effective immediately.
Lila swallowed hard.
But, the fraudulent will your father forced, Elena said gently.
She didn't enjoy watching her sister crumble.
The original will names me successor.
Lila's voice cracked.
So I get nothing.
Elena hesitated.
You were used, Lila. You believed what you were told. That doesn't make you innocent, but it doesn't make you beyond help either. Lila lowered her eyes, defeated.
Howard turned back to Elena.
The board has reviewed all the documents. By unanimous vote, we reinstate you as Chief Operations Officer and appoint you interim CEO until the formal transition plan is completed. Applause filled the room, soft at first, then warm and sincere. Howard approached her quietly.
Henry always said you had strength he couldn't teach.
Today you proved it. Elena nodded, holding back tears. For the first time in months, she felt she was standing exactly where she was meant to be. Henry's legacy was safe. Months passed as Elena rebuilt everything her father had tried to destroy. Ward Freight flourished under her leadership. Lila, humbled and uncertain, moved into a small apartment downtown and began taking business courses, hoping to earn a future, not inherit one.
Elena visited her father only once in the detention center.
He looked smaller, as if his arrogance had been holding him upright for years.
I never hated you, he said quietly.
I hated that Henry saw in you what he never saw in me. Elena stood, steady and calm.
Some wounds heal. Some don't.
But I'm done bleeding for people who choose to hurt me. That night, as she stood in Henry's restored library, his old leather chair beside her and the Art of War open on her lap, she whispered into the quiet, We did it, Grandpa. Not for money or power, but for truth, and for your honor. She felt peace settle over her at last. Tell me where you're watching from, and if this story touched you, hit subscribe. More truth, more healing, and more powerful stories are coming. A year after Henry's death, Elena visited his grave with fresh flowers and the small fishing lure he'd once tied to her very first rod. The wind curled gently around her, carrying the scent of pine and lake water. You were right, she whispered. In the midst of chaos, there is opportunity. She thought of the frightened woman who spent her first night in a motel, bruised, alone, and stripped of everything. That woman had grown into someone Henry would recognize, steady, principled, unbreakable. Later that evening, she hosted dinner for those who stood by her when her own family didn't: Nora, Evan, Howard, and a few trusted board members. Laughter filled the home that had once felt like a battlefield. When the night ended, Elena stood at the window overlooking the city, lights flickering like scattered stars. Betrayal had cut her deeply, but it did not define her. Strength did. Purpose did. And the people who chose to stand beside her did. As she closed Henry's library door, she felt a quiet certainty. What we lose can shape us. But what we rebuild, on our own terms, can transform us. Elena Ward was living proof of that truth.